Yeah, Srishti, just confirm it if it's visible.
No, sir.
1 minute, 1 minute, let me present it. Because it's some lag, man. Now, now,
No.
No,
now,
sir.
now, even not now.
सर एक्चुअली वो विजिबल है लेकिन there are multiple screens.
Oh.
So actually we are able to see the Google Meet part, we are not able to see the PPT.
Okay, 1 minute. I think there is some entire screen. This one share. आप बताना. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me just go through it again. So quickly, this is just a pandas library like NumPy, okay? And they are written in Python programming. And they are just used for data manipulations and analysis. When you are saying analysis of anything, we are talking about the historical data, right? And there is some difference between analysis and analytics, okay? Whenever you say analysis, we are mostly focused on the historical data, right? We are not talking about any patterns in the data. Maybe you can say some machine learning algorithms. When you put some machine learning algorithm in your data, then you say analytics, right? But analysis is broadly when you deal with this only the historical data, right? So, but the pandas libraries, these pandas libraries are typically used for, you can say, the panel data, okay, and the time series data. So whenever you try to manipulate numerical tables and time series data, okay, and one of the you can say one of the features of this time series data, you can say they are panel data. So whenever you see any panel data, they are nothing but they are time series data. So x-axis will contain the time frame, the time horizon, okay. This is called a time series data. But when you capture two groups, their observations over multiple time frame, then they are called the panel data, okay. This is just a small difference, okay. Panel data are typically time series data. Don't get confused. So when anybody asks you what is the difference between panel data and time series data, you can say the panel data are example of time series data. They do have a time series component on x-axis, and y will contain their observation. That is you can say some observations. Maybe it is a y, but this is fixed. In time series data, the time frame, the time horizon is independent. They will not change. Only the observation will change. Okay, this is fixed, but the observation will change, okay. Typically this in microeconomics, we typically study this GDP, unemployment, maybe you can say the income, inflation. These are the some terms which I can recall that we typically study in this microeconomics, okay. But there is some interesting, you can say, plot. You might have seen there is something called Phillips curve, okay. So which I can recall, the Phillips curve is nothing but it's a graph between, maybe which I can recall is unemployment versus inflation, okay. So whenever inflation increases, unemployment will reduce, which is a kind of a weird statement, but whenever you see any countries, you know, this Phillips curve, you will see when their inflation increases, unemployment decreases, but in a long run, not in a short run, okay. So that is why sometimes countries try to, you know, increase the inflation. Even if you have seen in India, they keep certain, you know, the figure of inflations in certain, you can say, the range. They don't increase too much of inflations, because in a shorter run, even if you increase the inflation, unemployment also increase. But in a longer run, when you increase the inflation, unemployment will, you can say, increase. by you can say unemployment is gonna decrease, okay, but in a longer run, okay. That is why some countries try to calibrate how much they want to increase the inflation, okay. In macroeconomics, obviously it's a study of some international trade, maybe some few terms which I don't remember it what you people study in this macroeconomics, okay. But some monetary exchange, maybe some currency related thing, international trade, maybe these all are the some KPIs which you people might have studied in this macroeconomics. But in health sector, in this field, if you see some of the insurance company, for example, in the COVID, people used to capture data over some time period, okay. So for example, if somebody is vaccinated, then their data is captured, and before they got vaccinated, their data is captured. So before and after, you can say they are the two people, same individual, you can say, or sometimes two different individuals, but the same time periods. If you use it, then it will be a panel data. Similarly with the finance, you try to check the market, how market is stable or not. That is captured in this now just confirm if my screen is visible, because is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Now coming to this slicing and this, you can say, indexing and slicing. Indexing means you're trying to capture the position, means where our data is. Let's say this index, you can say S3, maybe it's calling S4, and maybe if you C2. So this is index, you can say, but this is one observation, one data point, okay, corresponding to marks and corresponding to S4, right? So indexing is nothing but it's positioning of the data, where your data is. And slicing means trying to slice it out, that which rows and column you want, okay. That is your slicing, okay. So if you see this data, just see this data. Typically it's whenever you try to capture data in a data science, we create some Excel sheet, because typically we capture data in Excel sheet format in terms of rows and columns. So whenever you see data in Excel sheet, all the columns are typically called features in a machine learning terms. Sometime when you have seen regression problem, I'll teach you next the regression and all. In regression, we don't call a feature, we call it an independent variable and dependent variable. But here we call it just a features, okay. Feature and target is the word which we typically use for classification machine learning algorithms, okay. So coming to this slicing, there are different way of indexing. One is a standard indexing. There is something called lock and iLock. So this is very much important because when you try to import data from Excel sheet, and then you do some kind of this data analysis, and then when you put some algorithms, machine learning algorithms, then you have to struggle with this iLock command, lock command. These are nothing but these are just functions, okay. So I'm sharing you one link of data, which is this link, just a URL. You can see this URL, okay. I'm just sharing you in the chat box this URL, okay. And then I'll open my this Jupyter notebook, and then I'll show you how you can code it. So let me do one thing. Let me just share you this, yeah. Just open it, and I'm sharing you the coding one. Just open it and see the data. And in the Google Classroom, just see, I have said you this Python programming. Just refresh it and just see. Okay. So let me open my. Is my screen visible? Saloni, my screen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible. Yes, sir.
Okay, just open the PDF file which I have said you. Okay, so that side by side you can also do programming and do one thing. If it is visible, just do one thing, one more thing. Let me go to Google. Okay. Just open your Gmail account if you have. Okay. In a browser and write Collab, COLLAB. I think you people might be knowing this. Google Collab. Collab.research.google.com. I think. Yeah, this one. I'm also sharing you this. So when you open it, let me open it again for you. This one. Collab.research.google.com. When you open it and just enter it. Okay. So when you enter it, it will give you Google Colab. And here in the bottom, just see new notebook. Let me open. New notebook. Okay. So this is you can say the workspace, which you can see it, which is similar to our Jupyter notebook. Okay. Now, so for example, if I want to import here, I will just paste it and I will run it like this. Just see if it is. Let's see if it works. Okay. It is still connecting to the host. Let it connect. Okay. So those who haven't downloaded this Jupyter notebook, you can take help of this. You can say the Google Colab. So they are also displaying the data like this. Okay. So this is RAM and disk and all these things will be showing you. Like this green button, it means it has executed. And if you see the green like this, it means this cell has already executed. So employee ID, skill, age, pay and name. Okay. These are some features. These are some columns and these are rows. It means we have only 5 records, 5 observations. Okay. 0 to 4. Okay. So now how you can do it, how you can run in pandas. Okay. Just see. So for example, you just run it here. I'm just running it. So first import pandas as PD and NumPy for numerical operations and all, and pandas for data manipulations. Okay. These two are, you can say, the default libraries which we typically use, right? And PD, this PD dot read CSV. Read and then underscore CSV is a function because it's in small bracket. Okay. And we have passed the URL. This is just a URL where our data is. So when you run this command df, this is giving you the entire table. They are printing you the entire table here. Okay. But here one data is missing. Okay. Let it be like this. So whenever you have a data in, let's say, in any form, try to convert it in CSV. Okay, so and just try to run this command, read CSV pd dot, it means pd means this pandas. Okay, now we are connecting with pd dot read. Okay, because we are trying to access the data from this location. Okay, so now coming to this something called indexing. We are trying to display data as per the index. For example, you just want a skill. Okay, and you want just select a single column. Okay, just skill, a single column here. So when you run df this double quote skill, just run it. So these whatever there in this single column, you will get it. So this is just indexing. Indexing means what column you want or what row you want, just a position. Okay, if you put in place of age, you will get these 35, 27, 32 and something like that. So similarly, when you put this employee ID and skill, you have to put a double bracket here. Okay, just see. So it's just a small command, you all people can run it. So employee ID and this whatever skill was there, we're just trying to capture it and all the data, right? We have only 5 records of the data, so all 5 records are here. Similarly, this just a small command here. So now df0 this 2, so it will select row 0 and row 1, and the index is exclusive. Okay, the same type Python slice rows using the slice object. So whenever you run this command df and the bigger bracket 0 and this colon 2, this will select row 0 and row 1. Just remember it. This is how you can run this command. Similarly, when you write 0 then colon 4 then colon 2, it will start with 0 row 0 and increment by step 2 0 to 2, and maybe this is exclusive, this is not inclusive. So may it print or may not hit print. This is just exclusive. So when you run this, it will only print 0 and 2, whatever row in 0 and 2, because they have incremented by step 2. Okay. Similarly, 0 2 and then employment ID. It's selecting multiple rows and a single column. This is just a command. Okay. Similarly, we are saying index name only capture the names. Okay, we have 5 records indexing with the name. Okay, so they are capturing employee ID, skill, age and pay. Employee ID, skill, age and pay, and name they are also capturing. So just put name in the front and whatever there in on the right side. So just see, we have to setting the index as a name. So now our index is this. We are trying to capture data by indexing as a name. Now whatever there in the name, we have 5 names. So these all 5 names have been printed here. Similarly, we want in data frame 1 Indu and this Indu and this Palani. 1 minute. So now it will start with Indu and print till Palani. Okay. So this is how we are indexing. So we are just passing the index Indu and let's say Palani. Okay. So from Indu to Palani, it will capture it. Okay. It will start with Indu and stop it with plan. Similarly, it will select multiple rows and a single column using this index. We are using this index A's. Okay, so just see. Okay, similarly you can now coming to this ilog. Okay, when you run it, then you will understand how it works. Okay, similarly the ilog command. Okay, so when you try to select a single row, so there is some command called ilog. Okay, so ilog command is also used for selecting a single, you can say, the row. So skill, age, pay, name, all you can see these all are in a single row. Okay, and their index is 0. They will start with index 0. Similarly, ilog command using the multiple rows and their index. Okay, 0 and 1. When you use a command ilog and passing the index 0 and 1, 0 and 1, they will print it your table like this. Similarly, 0 and 3. Okay, just see 0 and 3, 0 and 3. So they are just giving you this table because the index is 3 and 0 using the ilog command. Ilog means they are just specifically printing the rows 0 and 3. Similarly, if you want to print a multiple rows and multiple columns, let's say you want just 0 and 1 and 0 1 column, then it will give you table like this. Okay, if you increase the index, it will print a bigger table. Similarly, for multiple columns, only you want 0 rows and 2 columns 0 and 1, then it will print like this. Okay, just run it and then you will understand how this command are working. Okay, because just they are just a small command. Okay, we want 2 rows 0 and 1, then we have passed 0 and 1 and 1 column, 0th column. Just run it. So these are the some commands of this ilog. Similarly, ilog. Okay, 0 and 2. You want two rows. Okay, now coming to this negative one. So ilog, when you see this ilog and double semicolons starting with -1, they are just they are just printing a table in a reverse order. Now you have to print 0 1 2 3 4. Now it is printing in a reverse order. Okay, that is why minus. Indexing means you start with reverse order. That is why -1. Okay. Similarly, if you see this one, it's like a way of printing it like 2 rows and 2 columns. The another way is like this. Okay, 2 rows and 2 columns. Similarly, you just want a single row to be printed. Then there is some command called log. Okay, so for a log, if you want a single row to be printed, okay, then you use a log command. Log and ilog also used interchangeably, but as per your requirement. Okay, you just want an index Indu to be printed. So what is her employee ID? What is her skill, age, and the pay and all, right? So all these things you can use it using log command and then passing the index, name index. Then it will print you a single row, the data, entire data. Okay, so these are just something called indexing. Similarly, you just want 0 and first row to be printed. You are using this log command. Similarly, you want index to Indu and Karthi to be printed. That just use double bracket here. Okay, so it will give you Indu and Karthi details. Okay, indexing means you are passing the name index here. Okay, but just remember it, you have to put double bracket here. single bracket will give you the error. Okay, so now let's say you want employee ID, and 0th you can say the rows. It will just give you a rows and single columns. It is not giving you any names and all. Okay, if you just want their index to be printed, so just they are printing are the employee ID. Of 0th you can say the records. Okay, so if you want the employee ID at 0th observations and their employee ID and their skill to be printed without names, then you can query like this in a pandas. Similarly, for a rows to be printed, you can say employee ID, skills and all, and the name nothing. I think there is a no names. Okay, there are different ways you can print it, the different combinations as per your requirement. For example, here Indu, the name, an employee ID and skill you want with the name. This table only you want. The name parameter is given and their employee column and skill column. You just want like this. You don't want any other details, not age and pay scale. Then you can print like this. So these are some you can say commands. For example, start with 0 and increment of 2. Okay, so you stop at row 4 by incrementing 2. You start with 0, increment 2 and stop at 4. Okay, so these are some of the permutation combination you can say. I don't know, there is some problem here or what. Invalid index at line 5. 1 minute, just run it. Okay, so now 0, 2 and 4. Okay, so starting with 0, ending at increment of 2 and you're stopping at 4. Okay, and printing the entire table because we have captured the entire columns. Okay, entire features. Similarly, you want, you can say increment of 2 and you want feature employee ID and age. Okay, and here skill is also, I think it is capturing. Okay, so it include columns from employee ID to age. So it will capture, okay, this column is there. Column means from employee ID to age, this column. Okay, so it will also capturing the skill because it is in between. Okay, but we want increment of 2. Okay, so this is a typically different ways of indexing. You are passing some of the parameters, their index positions, maybe some numerical or in string format because our features are in strings, and then you try to take the values out of this. Okay, because you are using the pandas, so they are just manipulating the data by indexing it and they are printing you some tables. So it's like a querying. You are trying to query the whatever data you had and whatever meaning you want to extract out of the data which was available to you. So in that case you use pandas. Okay, so these are the some, you can say, the features which are available. So now do one thing. Is my screen visible? Just confirm. Saloni, are you there? Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So whatever I just explained you in this pandas, you can run it. I have given you the PDF file. So what I did, my data was stored in CSV format. Okay, just see the extension. So because it's on internet, okay, so I just passed the URL. Okay, so it's in CSV. So read -CSV is you can say the function which is accessing the data. Now we are displaying whatever data was stored in this in data.csv. Okay, and then I did some indexing. Okay, indexing means you're just passing it. You can say the position, maybe some, let's say we are passing some in numbers. If it's rows, we are passing in numbers, but if it's columns, typically it's in string, right? So you are passing the string. So if you want to select a single column, we are passing like this. So whatever I have explained you in this Jupyter notebook, I'm just explaining you here. Similarly, you want two columns to be printed, which has a 2 index, employee ID and a skill. So we are just printing the entire table along with this employee ID and a skill. Similarly, you want only 2 rows to be printed. Okay, so we print like this. We start with a 0 and we end up at row 1 because we are just printing the two columns, 2 rows with entire features, employee ID to name. These are some features. Okay. Similarly, as I have already told you, start with 0 rows, increment 2, but stop at 4, which is exclusive. It's not inclusive. Okay, it may print or may not print. Okay. Similarly, this employee ID, the single columns we are printing. Now we just want index. We are setting the index name. Means name will be fixed here. It means setting the index. So set index is a function because it's in small bracket. I'm just giving you a clue. So whenever you write anything in small bracket, it means it's a method. Typically we call it a method, and sometimes we call it a function, but we just call it a method here. It's a method. And we are saying index, just set index name here. We are just fixing it, the name here. Okay. Similarly, these are the some, you can say, the data to be printed. Here, if you see this one, age, along with age, you have to start with Indu and stop it with Plani. Okay. So if you have Indu, Karthi, Plani, so in between this name is there. So that is why they are printing starting with Indu, stopping with Plani, and they are capturing the age. Just see this one. So they are typically capturing the data. This is something called a data manipulation. We are just trying to manipulate the data and accessing the data using the index. Okay. Now coming to this iloc function, you can say iloc is also using this kind of accessing the data. So only we want a single row to be printed, starting with the 0 row. Whatever was in the 0 row, it is captured here. Similarly, we want 2 rows to be printed, 0 and 1. Whatever was in 0 and 1, we are just printing it. Similarly, start with 0 and 1 and column 0 and 1. Only 2 rows, only 2 column and 2 rows to be printed. So we print like this. Similarly, you just want 0 row and third. You want 0 observation and third observation to be printed along with entire features. Then we write like the 0,3. Okay. Similarly, we want only single row with 2 features, 0th features and 1 feature. In 0th feature, we have employee ID and 1 skill. Similarly, we want 2 rows, 0 and 1 and 1 column. Only at 0th column you have employee ID. Okay. At 0th column we have employee ID and the 2 rows. 2 rows means 0 and 1, 2 observation with 1 feature, that is employee ID. Similarly, you see this one. This is important. Indexing -1. This double column means we capture all the you can say the rows, but just reverse it. -1 means just reverse it. So whatever was at 0, now it is at 4. They are just printing reverse, because this is saying just use it -1 index. But this double column means capture all the rows, means all the 4 observations we have, but in a reverse order. Okay. Similarly, you can see this one. I think it's self-explanatory now. Coming to this lock function, in this lock command, sorry, you want INDO this index to be printed. So this whatever there in the INDO row wise you have printed it, but like this. Okay. Similarly, you want 2 rows to be printed, 0 and 1, inclusive of all the features. Okay. Now INDO and Karthi, this will print only INDO and Karthi. Had it been a double single column here, it would have printed INDO to Karthi. Okay. Similarly, you want 0 rows and this employee ID. They just printed it like this. Only want 0 rows and employee. What is the employee ID at 0th location is 20. At 0th row, what is employee ID is 21. Similarly, employee ID and a skill at 0th row is 21 and Python. Employee ID is 21 and their skill is Python. Similarly, their employee ID and a skill at 0th row. Okay. Now coming to this one, we want INDO with their employee ID and skill to be printed, but only one. There this is a row. What? So wherever INDO is, wherever in the INDO at whichever row, it will print with their employee ID and skill. All try to write in a single column. Okay. Now this is 0 and 4, as I already said, increment up 2 and print the entire table. Now this will print, you can say, the employee ID and age along with employee ID. Start with employee ID and this column. It means it will stop at age. Will start at employee ID but stop at age. Okay. And print all the rows with increment of 2. Okay. So this is all from my side. Okay. Any questions so far? Any questions so far?